Welcome to the biannual report on victimization and victim services in Idaho, funded by the Idaho Council on Domestic Violence and Victim Assistance under the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare using federal funds from the Victims of Crime Act. This short video will introduce you to the purpose of the biannual report and walk you through its different components. I'm Dr. Lisa Groh at Bow Staff, and I'm leading the team of Boise State researchers and students, both undergraduate and graduate, working on this project.
I'm Dr. Laura King, one of the researchers on the project. Did you know that in 2018, there were over 60,000 personal and property crimes reported to Idaho police agencies? So for each one of those crimes, there was at least one person or business that was victimized. So those figures are staggering, but if we consider the fact that only about half of crimes are reported to police, this means that in 2018, there were well over 100,000 personal and property crimes in Idaho.
I'm Dr. Lane Gillespie, also one of the researchers working on the project. Here in Idaho and nationally, a lot of time, effort, and money goes into counting the 50% of crime that is reported to policing agencies and getting that information out to the communities in the form of crime rates. Yet we know very little about the people and businesses that were victimized by those crimes or the organizations that serve them, such as whether their constitutional rights were afforded to them, what services they needed, what services they received, the challenges they faced in recovering from their victimization, or the victim service agencies who provide many of those services to crime victims.
And we know even less about the people and businesses that did not report their victimization to policing agencies, why they chose not to report, what can be done so people will choose to report in the future, and their ability to access services for recovery from victimization. That's the purpose of the biannual report on victimization and victim services, to provide one central space for people and policymakers to find information on victimization, crime victims, and victim services in Idaho.
In order to make this central space accessible to everyone in Idaho, the biannual report will primarily exist online with its own website. This will allow us to provide direct connections to agencies and organizations across the state that collect data on and respond or provide services to people who are victimized by crime. With an online presence, we can also more easily update data as it changes over time.
Since we have more to learn about crime victims and crime victim services, we figured the best way to learn more would be to ask people. So as a part of the biannual report, we'll be doing two different surveys. The first survey will be of agencies across the state that provide direct services to victims of crime. And this survey we'll do every 2 years. And in it we'll ask agencies about the type of crime victims they serve, the services they provide, and whether there's any barriers they encounter in providing those services. The second survey will be of crime victims themselves. So with those agencies across the state that provide direct services, we'll be asking crime victims about the crimes they experienced, the services they receive, if there were any services they needed but did not receive, and whether they were able to exercise their crime victims' rights. So the victim survey will be fully anonymous. That means we won't ask people their names or any other identifying information.
For the 50% of victims who report their victimization to a policing agency, the criminal justice system can be overwhelming and difficult to understand. We wanted to include information in the biannual report on two pressing issues in responding to victimization in Idaho: sexual assault kits and domestic violence arrests. You may have heard about the Idaho legislature passing new laws about the testing of sexual assault kits. Sexual assault kits contain physical and biological evidence collected during a medical exam after a sexual assault has occurred. The new laws require sexual assault kits to be submitted to and analyzed by the state crime lab. Once the evidence is analyzed, the results are sent back to the policing agency conducting the investigation. As part of the biannual report, we'll be conducting a study of 100 random kit results that were sent back to policing agencies around Idaho. We'll be talking to the policing agencies to see what, if any, effect the kit results are having on the investigation and prosecution of sexual assault cases in Idaho. In addition, every biannual report will focus on one emerging issue in victimization here in Idaho. For this first biannual report, we'll examine the effects of a recent Idaho Supreme Court decision on response to domestic violence. In the Clark decision, the Idaho Supreme Court ordered policing agencies to stop arresting in domestic violence cases unless officers witnessed the violence, obtained a warrant, or the injuries were so severe that the crime was a felony. Policing agencies in Idaho and across the country have been able to arrest suspects in these incidents without having to witness the actual abuse or obtain a warrant for the past 30 years. We'll be meeting with policing agencies around Idaho to understand how their response to domestic violence has changed since the Clark decision, what works and doesn't work, and what they need to effectively respond to domestic violence and protect victims.
While surveying and talking to people and agencies are always a great way to get information on a topic or problem, there's nothing better than being present. So as part of the biannual report, the research team will be visiting select places around Idaho to see firsthand how communities are responding to victimization, those who experience victimization, the successes they are having, and the challenges they face. And we'll be working with the Council on Domestic Violence and Victim Assistance to see how applications for federal funding for victim services can be more accessible and manageable for agencies around the state.
All of this information will be available on the biannual report website, and there's more to come. If you have questions, want more information, or are an agency that would like to participate in any of the studies or site visits, please contact us at crimjust@boisestate.edu. Thanks for taking the time to learn more about the biannual report on victimization and victim services.